Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Family Law, that's the Jordan Publishing imprint. And this book has actually got an interesting title. It's Capacity to Change. It's this book here, we'll have a look at it in a minute. It's been written by a number of people. It's got a subhead, just so that we get some idea of what this is about. The subhead is Understanding and Assessing a Parent's Capacity to Change within the timescales of the child. It's been written by a team of specialist contributors led by 4 doctors. Dr. Bryn Williams, Dr. Emma Peart, Dr. Roger Young and Dr. David Briggs. And as I've said, it's an e-book as well as an ordinary print book, and it's an imprint of Jordan Publishing Family Law. Now, Elizabeth and I looked at this book. We had a talk about it because it was an interesting area to explore further and have a good look at the book. And for our review, the appreciation of this work, we've given it the title Problem Parenting and Assessing the Capacity to Change in Accordance with the Needs of the Child. We all know that the child's interests got to be paramount. This is the paper. It's a paperback. Not a very big one. There's the spine and there's the back. You can see there. As I say, it's an e-book as well. 230 odd pages. Reasonably detailed index. And the paragraph, it's the paragraph numbering, which is where the index comes in here. There are some figures to show you various explanation of what is going on. There is quite a lot of footnoting you can see on the sides there, and you've got again, actually on this side, which is the right hand side, you've got the actual paragraph numbering to find things. There are quite a lot of useful subheadings as well. If we go to the front of the book, there are the list of all the people involved. You can see there's a substantial list of people. They've gone to a very large number of experts in their own field. There's a very sweet dedication, which I always like to mention, because it's obviously dedicated to people who are of great importance to the authors, and it's always a very nice tribute to mention that. Then we have the acknowledgements from the 4 doctors. And then we have biographical details of the team of people who have produced this. I can't go into all the details about all the people, unfortunately, in this short review, but you will see I'm trying to show all the names very quickly, and then that's the last bit. Then we come to the contents. Now, the contents are reasonably detailed. It gives you case studies. You can probably see those mentioned to give you an idea of what they're putting forward. More contents there. And then out of the 14 chapters, then the index at the back. And you do, as I say, you have a number of case studies that are listed. Then in the body copy itself of the book, you've got a standard introduction there. And then you've got a whole range of particular points. There's a use of bullet points made and so forth. And it's really trying, for instance here, the demands of school, the big ask. You see, they're dealing with issues here which are really very fundamental, and it's not just a question that would be of interest to lawyers, but certainly I think sociologists, philosophers and a whole range of people, so it's not specific to the family law jurisdiction, but it's a wider jurisdiction too. This is what we say: can the proverbial leopard change his proverbial spots? Can inadequate or irresponsible or dysfunctional or neglectful or violent parents develop the capacity to change? Big question. The tabloids don't normally look at that sort of thing. They come up with the sensational garbage which they produce on a regular basis, which is sensational, but it does not help what the real problems are. This book is trying to show what the problems are and how change can be affected. That is what I take partly out of the book. What methods then, policies and systems can be put in place to affect such change, bearing in mind that in problem situations the needs of the child must always be paramount. Now, we've all had family cases where we identify what the problems are. I'm sure if you're a teacher, as I am, I've been a teacher, I've seen the parents, seen the problems. As you know, once you see the student, the learner, and then when you meet the parents, you understand much more about why the child sometimes behaves in the way he or she does. Now, therefore, that goes back to the parental responsibilities. And this book has been produced, I think it's an excellent book, by the way, it's been produced to assist professionals, primarily lawyers, and I should think Kafka should be made to read this as well, if possible, if they have the time, to establish criteria for assessing whether indeed an inadequate parent has the capacity to change in order to meet the needs of their child within timescales appropriate to those needs. And the four editors, who are all clinical psychologists, have put their varied and impressive expertise in this field at the disposal, mainly of legal practitioners, although the book is also a valuable aid, as I've indicated, to social care and educational professionals. And I certainly think that this would be useful for people doing a PGCE to read, to get an idea of that element of it, certainly within the theoretical part of the syllabuses. But I do think it's got a much wider appeal, and I'd thank Jordans very much for producing it. The editorial team in full consists of 17 other contributors. I showed them names very quickly, mainly clinical and counselling psychologists, legal practitioners and social workers. And one contributor, Roger Moran, was formerly the Children's Rights Director for England, and another, Caroline Pipe, has just assumed a new role as Head of Clinical Practice for the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. And as an ex-borough councillor myself, I do value the work that these officers do, and I'd like to thank them. I'd also like to say that this sort of book that I think they should read, and this should again be compulsory reading really for anybody involved in local government work in this area, because it does give you a very good insight as to where we might be going with this capacity to change. It's only a suggestion, but it's certainly one I'm hoping would be taken up by those who are serious about their vocation. Published by Family Law Imprint then of Jordans, this is an important book, objective and non-judgmental in its stance, which is absolutely what it must be, as well as exhibiting the compassion that is needed in this delicate area. Logically organised with case examples throughout, it offers a wealth of professional guidance and advice on a particularly delicate and heartrending subject which centres on the welfare of children living mostly in the most difficult of environments, often featuring maltreatment and abuse, the consequences of which are described in some detail with a view to arriving at remedial solutions, and as I've indicated, there are case examples. Various assessments and testing procedures are described, aimed at deciding whether a troubled parent has or does not have the capacity to change. Now, of course, there are going to be people who say it's a waste of time. It isn't actually. It's an important area, because I've always found that when the chips are down, there will be attempts made. I've certainly seen it with quite a few parents who've been my clients, that they have made big efforts. They may be a bit full of bravado earlier, but when they finally realise what's going to happen, they do actually have that capacity to change. And I do believe it's there if we can just draw it out a bit and give people options. The emphasis, of course, then, is not merely on the many and manifold problems of troubled and troublesome parents, but on the needs of the child, which of course is the area we're mainly involved in. Certainly the judiciary are, and I as an advocate will certainly be always having that at the forefront of my mind. These matters therefore are examined from a number of perspectives, including the voice of the child and the characteristics of the affected children's lives within their family environments and at school. And can I just say that I think we've moved ahead quite well in this area with CAFCAS, with the way that the child can write notes to the judge, and that the judge will take some notice of what a child says, because at one stage that did not happen. And I think that was a very serious mistake, a blunder, frankly, by the Court of Appeal some years ago. And I'm glad to see that there's a bit of rectification, because, frankly, that was wrong, and the child must be looked at. The voice of the child must be considered. And that's something I think with the evolving society we're getting more used to that. And it's obviously down to a number of people, well-known people who push this in the national arena. This book is obviously designed very much more for the active professional and advisor. So from the perspective of lawyers and the judiciary involved in these matters, it's interesting and encouraging, I think, to note that in the acknowledgements, the editors, in their words, wish to extend their gratitude to the courts and to the many judges who required them to explain psychology in a way that assists in making difficult decisions about children's lives. That, of course, is a great help to us all. Let me conclude by saying that they express the hope that their efforts in compiling this book will protect children and families in the future, revealing as it does the latest thinking in this difficult area. The book, I think, as I say, should be required reading for insights that it provides to all professionals who operate in this field. And certainly I think that is something we would strongly echo in our review. The publication date is 2015. It's only a small book. It's quite an easy one to read, too, not difficult. It's a subject matter which is difficult. There's the back of it, which I think can cause a few problems. Let's take the middle bit here. This is the footnoting. You can see at the side. This is a case example. It says, a breakdown in the reflective parental function. We're getting a few words coming in which may confuse people, but at the end of the day, this is again giving an example of a child. They give them names and they set out some of the problems, the psychological assessments and what happens over a period of time. Then you do have, again, at the end, conclusions, which I hope will assist. Then you've got, for instance, another chapter written by various contributors. This is looking at psychotherapy and various sort of schemes that can be used. Again, there's a lot of detail here. You can see SMART is used, for instance, in drug alcohol problems, a very major part of the difficulties that certainly I have encountered, both in court and in the teaching environment as well, dealing with parents and children with SEN. Now, there's another example there of the information, some case law as well. Again, Mrs. Justice Palfrey is mentioned here, for instance, in a particular case, and you've got a number of detailed cases which highlight the points which they're trying to make. I think this is a very important book. I'm hoping, obviously, that there will be new editions perhaps in the future of this book which will assist us to come to terms with what is an evolving way in which we look at the subject of parents and children in the courts and in the court system. We're going through a lot of change. Mr. Justice Mumby, as he then was, Sir James Mumby, President of the Family Division, has made a lot of comments recently about looking backwards to where we were a few years ago and looking forwards, say 20 years, 30 years even, to where we might be with the massive changes that are taking place within the concept of family law. And I'm very pleased to recommend this book in particular as one that I think, certainly if you're an undergraduate studying family law, you might find this quite interesting as well. Certainly not just on a legal basis, but on a sociological and medical basis too, to a certain extent. Thank you anyway to all the people concerned. It's a great, I think it's a step forward for a lot of us, and it's something we need to have, and we need more of this in the future. I'd like to thank the publishers too, before having making the decision to produce this in the first place. Thank you all. Bye-bye.